Hello everyone, and today I'm going to be talking to you about Sabo, the Revolutionary Army leader, one of the newest cards from OP5. I think this leader honestly is really fantastic to play. I think he's honestly the sleeper hit, as I might mention, as I talk more about this deck, especially in comparison to a lot of the other leaders. A lot of the other leaders kind of seems to spotlight. But I honestly think Sabo is a really strong leader, if not at least a very strong contender. So getting into what Sabo does, if you have 1 Don on him during your opponent's turn, if any of your characters with 5k power or more were to be KO'd, you can just kind of minus 1k power from them instead and stop them from being KO'd. So very fantastic leader ability in terms of just being able to keep something alive, keep something on the board, and has a lot of really strong interactions with some of the cards in the deck as well to kind of help either defend your board or allow you to kind of go aggressive and kind of turn on the opponent and just kind of overwhelm them with the cards that you do play. I'll be going over each card after this, and then I'll kind of give an overview of what the deck wants to do afterwards. Just wanted to get the leader here first and foremost. I think he's also really strong because of the combination of red and black together, right? So he's got access to plenty of good ways to remove some stuff. We're mostly going to be removing with power over cost, but yeah, without further ado, we'll get into it and we'll kind of explain the cards of the deck. Alright, so I think some of the first Revo Army cards we'll start going over is obviously Bello Betty herself. This is your searcher of the deck. This is what you want to search out any Revolutionary Army cards. As we will be going with most of the Revolutionary Army engine. It seems like one of the better bets, right? I mean, that's what Sabo wants. All of the cards need a Revolutionary Army leader to really pop off. Not all, but most of their effects, right? So Bello definitely helps keep the deck consistent, helps you search what you want, and can even search out the black Sabo blocker from set 4, the Dressrosa one as well. Seems though he does have the Revolutionary Army tag, so definitely more value in the deck that way, right? Definitely for how they want to kind of build Sabo, how they want Sabo to be. So yeah, definitely need 4 of these. Okay, and the next card we're going to talk about is Emporio Evenkov. Probably botched the name, but oh well. So what this guy does is activate main once per turn. If this character has 7k power or more, you can play up to 1 Revolutionary Army type character with 5k power or less other than Evenkov from your hand. I only run this at 2 because it's a good combo extender for the deck. It can help play out and cheat out some cards you otherwise wouldn't be able to play alongside him in a turn. However, I don't always want to see it. I think it's fine where it is. I probably maybe would want to bump this up to 3. It's definitely a give or take with how you want the deck to go. But being able to play out some of your other cards like Karasu that we'll see in a second, or even Bello Betty's to help search more things out, or even some of your minus cost characters, because there are some that in Revo that can do this. To kind of help like clear your board or just extend your plays or even just go wide with your own board, making it really tough for opponents to not only clear out everything but defend themselves, right? This card helps a lot with stuff like that, but it's not end all be all for the deck. The deck has other ways of doing things, has other ways of making like on tempo plays to kind of upset your opponent's board and kind of bring you back in, whether you need that or not, right? But by himself, he is pretty decent. He's a 4-cost 5k, so he at least can contest with most 5k leaders. He also has a 1k counter, which is really useful. Can still be searched out by Bello Betty, of course. So maybe I would want to see this at 3, just as a nice option. But 2 has been fine for me. When I see him, cool. If I don't see him, it's alright, because at the end of the day, you do need to see him in hand with another Revo Army card in order to try and even cheat something out in the first place. Which isn't too bad, but there's other cards that aren't with Revo Army but are really good in the deck that kind of bring out the reason why we probably see this at only 2. But yeah, no, he's a fantastic card regardless, so definitely want him in the deck. Alright, next card on the list is the main one himself, Karasu. This card to me is fantastic. Even if you're not playing Revo Army and like you're playing red, if there's ever a time where he feels like he can work in the deck, it's fine, because We'll just go over it. On play, the first one's a bit iffy, but the second one after is fine. If your leader is Revo Army, this character can minus 1k from not only characters, but leaders as well. This is fantastic. This is the first character that is able to actually minus things away from the leader, at least on play, right? So it just really does allow for super aggressive plays, super like comeback turnarounds. Being able to play these out, whether it's by themselves or through one of the counters in the deck that is able to play these, or through Ivankov himself, it's phenomenal. Because you can either, if you manage to somehow get it out on like an opponent's turn, right, you can do the on play and it can minus away from something, which kind of makes them either have to commit a bit more Don than usual, or might even stop an attack. Or if you get this out on your turn, you're able to just minus away from the leader, or minus away from a character that was otherwise very difficult to get over, and kind of make those swings a little easier on yourself, right? And then of course we have the when attacking, which if he has 7k power or more, he can do the minus 1k power again. So if you're able to keep this thing on board for a good few turns, you can get super amazing value out of him. Having multiple of these on the board, whether you got them out through Ivankov or just played them turn after turn after turn, it makes it super tough for the opponent to defend that. There's been multiple times against opponents where I've gotten 2 of these things out on board, and minusing a 5k leader down to 3k, so that they have to defend against like some of the 7ks you run, or just 7k swings, or just some of the bigger boss monsters you can run. It's crazy, it's insane, it's tough. They could have like 4 or 5 cards in hand and they still have to look over and probably give up a life or 2 just because there's no other way, there's no other option. So this card is honestly amazing to me in this deck. It's kind of what makes a lot of the deck tick in terms of giving it its great aggression, being able to go wide with these Revo Army cards or just multiple Karasus, and you can take so many games very quickly. Definitely run these at 4, definitely want them in the deck. Just one of the best cards, in my opinion. Okay, next up is Koala. This card is great as well. It's basically Otama but better if your leader is a Revo Army, right? So the on play is just if your leader is Revo, you basically give one of your opponent's characters minus 3k power. So already it's better than Otama in the sense of it's 1k more minus. At least for Revo Army leaders, right? But there are plenty of options, there are plenty of ways to just run both regardless. They're both 2k counters as well, which is amazing. But what's real, the only sad thing is this one is a 2 cost instead of Otama's 1, but again, the Emporio Ivankov can let you cheat this out sometimes if you really do need to put some of these down to minus some power away and remove some bigger bodies from the board, right? And then on top of that, she does have 3k herself. So if there have been 1 or 2 times where, because one of these are just on board, it's not as bad to commit Don to them and you can get like a 5k swing in. Whereas with Otama, you'd have to commit 5 whole Don to do that, which isn't always the best, not something you'd always want to do. But there aren't too many decks that would play Otama necessarily and keep it on the board for long anyway. If you're trying to minus K and then remove something anyway. But this has a lot of versatility in this deck. You can do a lot of things with this if you want to. I definitely would just keep these at 4, especially if you're playing like some removal type engine, right? But even if you are just playing a Revo leader, these are just really nice to see because again, it's a nice 2k that can be searched out by Bello Betty. So it's just a very good card for the deck. Definitely keep these at 4. Alright, next card in the deck is Sabo himself. So yeah, this card I definitely want to just run it at 3. I don't think I need to see it 4. I think it's just fine as it is. If it had like a 1k counter on it, right, maybe at 4 would be great, but 3 is completely fine. You can search this out with Bello Betty fine. If there are those that run the HQ stage, the Revolutionary Army HQ stage, to kind of like search out more Revo Army cards as well, that's also just, yeah, definitely run this at 3. It's completely fine. This card, definitely undervalued. I didn't like it when I first saw it because it didn't seem that amazing to me, but actually playing the deck, actually giving this stuff a try, giving it a chance, this card is better than I thought. You can you definitely want to play Sabo when you're about to remove something or attempting to remove something. 6 Don is a lot to just try and remove 2 things with a total power of 4K. But you can definitely just like remove one big thing, right? If you like lower it down enough, you definitely play him in that late game. Playing him on 6 probably isn't that amazing, depending on the matchup. But I've definitely played this against people who've set up like a blocker or 2, and I've removed 1 or 2 of those blockers, and then I've just gone wide, right? Because Evenkov can help you get out your Karasus can help with minusing power, your Koalas can help minus out power, and it just gives this so much, like, loads of options to really just kind of remove things from the board, give you that kind of balance everything, swing everything in your favor, and then you could just get completely aggressive and probably just take the game from there, really. And then if people do try to respond with removing this, unless it's like Sakazuki, right, where it's just bouncing it to the bottom of the deck, if they're attempting to KO it, you can just protect this with your leader. So yeah, that's one thing that's really undervalued in this deck. That's one thing that you didn't think you'd be doing a lot in this deck when you play it, which is protecting stuff with the leader. You just assume it all to just not come up that often, but it does. It comes up so much. And that's what really allows these cards that seem weaker to other bigger body cards to kind of just get some complete and total value out of the deck. So yeah, definitely won the Sabo with 3. Definitely a fantastic card. Better than I expected. Alright, so now that we're done with the Revo Army cards, it's time to move on to a lot of the other kind of like tech/spicy cards that you can run in the deck, right? But this one is one of the few to be expected. If you're playing removal, you are probably going to see Gordon. This card will probably be replacing OP6, or at least you can run this with other stuff because Revo and Film will get access to a card that does what this wants to do. But for now, this is still a decent option. So Gordon, if for whatever reason you don't know, for 1 cost, you can activate main, place this at the bottom of the deck, and give one of your opponent's characters minus 3k power. So the sad thing is he obviously can't be searched out. He doesn't have the 1k power, but that's okay. When you do see him, it's really nice because, again, he's such low cost that you can, past your 6 Don, 8 Don kind of turns, right? You can play this and still have options to play Sabo to remove something decently big, or blockers at the very least. Or just in the late game, you just have like plenty of combo potential to just kind of swing things in your favor with removal. I think removal is very strong now, especially both in red and black side, and Sabo having access to both these ways of doing so, I think it makes the deck really strong, potentially. So yeah, don't really want to see this at 4 though. There's other ways to like lower power in the deck, and because he can't be searched, it's not something, in comparison to other cards, I want to see all the time, but still a good card for the deck. So yeah, definitely run Gordon. Alright, next up is Nami. This is a card I didn't think I'd be using at all, but it works really well with the deck. So if you don't know, it's the activate main Nami, so this one is going to be able to give something on your board, be it your leader or your character, a rested Don. So this really helps, especially in the early game when you want that Don and Sabo, but you can't commit it just yet because you need to be able to play your 4 costs like your Ivankov, or your Karasus, or some of the other cards yet to be listed. So being able to like kind of play this out early, being able to just have it on board for value to give a rested Don to your leader, so your leader's online, your leader's ready to protect things. It's really helpful. It definitely, like when I played the deck without this, I was kind of like, man, I need to find out a way to kind of give my leader like that Don, so I'm not having to hard commit to him as much. Because you kind of need that protection with your leader, right? To be able to kind of keep some of your plays online, to be able to just not lose games outright from removal, because removal is very strong right now. And Nami was kind of that answer. Nami was very good in that early game, and then you can kind of switch up to some of the other options we have to where Nami isn't needed as much, but even then she's got the 1k counter in there, so she still has that value later on. Very good card in the deck, very much like a needed card, I feel like. I think at 4 is completely fine. You could definitely bump this down to 3 if you want to. You don't always need to see it, but in your starting hand or in your mulligan hand, it's completely fine. So yeah, definitely want to see these at 4. Okay, next up is the Otamas. So we talked about the Koalas, we mentioned how they're kind of the Revo Army's version of Otamas, right? But this deck, as you could expect, it's a removal deck. It had, you know, Otama is such a wonderful option for removal and just a wonderful option for red in general as well. So of course you want to just play this card as well. This is our other 2k option in the deck. This one isn't searchable, but that's completely fine. This card, you still, you know, everyone knows why we run this card. Everyone knows why this is here. But for those who don't, this is basically just a on play, give one of your opponent's characters minus 2k power for the turn. So instead of the Koala's 3k, there's a 2k, but this isn't limited by being the leader needing to be a Revo army. It just does this, it's completely fine. So there's definitely positives and negatives to both cards, but you just run both, it's completely fine. Definitely want to just have these at 4. I don't think you'd ever bump these down any lower. A completely fine card to kind of combo with the deck, right? So definitely a 4. Alright, and the next card to talk about is one of my personal faves coming out of set 5, is the new Chacker. So this card to me is honestly amazing, and I think I want to put it up to 3. But honestly, it's completely fine at 2. So this card, if you don't know, it's got, for 1 Don, activate main. You can give 2 rested Don cards to your leader or one of your characters. So even if you have the Nami on board, right, you can do some really cool stuff where, like, you play out a card, you've got some rested Don, and 3 of that Don at the very least has some value, right? Because you can put 1 onto the Chacker, or you can have the Nami give a rested Don to the Chacker, and then the Chacker can kind of give 2 more rested Don to be your leader, or any of your Revo cards, right? So you can make your Sabo like a 9k swing, you can make both your Ivankov and Karasu 7k, so they have that 7k where they can actually activate their, when attacking and activate main abilities, right? So this card can, like, kind of bring a lot of your characters online and kind of let you either continue to go wide or get really aggressive. Some people might see this card as kind of a win more, but if anything, I think this is the card that will kind of, like, just wins you the deck sometimes, right? Because you just kind of get this out on tempo. A lot of the time you either have blockers to defend this, you've even got your Sabo leader that can defend this, and they kind of either have to respect and deal with this, or they will have to let it stay on the board. And if this can even stay on the board for 1 turn, which it can many times before, that's it. Like, you have so much Don you can mess with thanks to this being able to give rested Don, and if you keep your Nami can give rested Don to stuff too, or put this online. So this card to me is amazing. It allows for so much potential in this deck. I honestly think I would want to bump this up to 3. I did have it at 3 at one point, but I did drop it down to 2 just because the deck felt kind of tight-knit to me, so I wanted to make sure some other stuff was in there. But I could definitely mess around with it. I can definitely, like, remove some stuff and bump this to 3 instead. This is such a phenomenal card to me in red, especially if, like, some of your characters need some of that Don on them to either just make bigger swings or activate effects such as Revo. This is, like, secretly a Revo card to me, right? Like, I wish, right? I wish Revo characters had, like, this ability in their deck archetype. Such a great card, such a fantastic card. I could just praise this thing so many times over. Alright, and the next card is probably the last of the Revo army characters, because it's actually really good, right, that OP4 made this character, and kind of still gave him the Revo army tag with the idea of the red-black Sabo in mind, right? But yeah, we have the 5-drop Sabo blocker. So this guy on play will just kind of, first off, just none of your characters can't be KO'd by effects. They can still be removed by Zakizuki, which isn't the best, or just Boo in general, which isn't the greatest. But this, in conjunction with your leader's ability, can just help protect a lot of your board, or if there is a turn where you're unable to commit a Don to your Sabo, you can drop this Sabo and your board is still just as safe as if you had the other one, right? For the most part, at least, right? But obviously you want to try and work for those dream turns where you have a Don and Sabo just in case, and then you have this one out. Yeah, and then as for the rest of his effects, he can just draw you 2 cards and then trash 2 cards, so you can kind of fix your hand a little bit with him, or potentially find some other cards that you need to look for, you need to search out. So just kind of a good way of filtering out the deck. It's a phenomenal card by itself. It of course works really well in this deck, so I of course just want to see it at 4. It's a really good blocker option. I don't think I need to see this any lower. It just works here. And of course it's got the 1k counter. And he's a 6k himself, so there's been plenty of times where if my board's gone wide, or I need to get aggressive, or I know I can just win out the game, he's just another 6k swing I can just do with the deck, and that's completely fine with me. So yeah, fantastic card, but definitely just want to run this at 4. Alright, next up on the list is Blocker Hina. This card is phenomenal with this deck. I love it. I love it so much because you essentially have this really cool combo where you obviously get the 1 done on your Sabo leader, you play the Hina out, and then this can just help keep a good few things away from you for a good while. If your opponent only has like 2 things on the board, or at least 1 thing and a leader, it becomes very difficult for them to deal with a lot of what you want to do. Because Hina, on block, you can select up to 1 of your opponent's characters with a cost of 6 cost or less, and then that selected character cannot attack during this turn. So anything 6 or under, you can just beat effect. And this is amazing, because on top of that, you can essentially just take the leader, you can just kind of go block, you can do the unblock effect, and then you can activate your Sabo effect to keep Hina on the board, because with Hina being a 6k, you can just bring it down to 5 and then you're fine. Once Hina's on the board, if you can play this on tempo, or if you can play this when your opponent just isn't going wide themselves, this becomes very difficult for your opponent to deal with. And this allows you to kind of continue to build your board safely behind this amazing wall combo of Hina and your leader. So I definitely want this card at 4. I think you can run this deck fine at 3. But I love this combo so much so that I just want it as many times as possible. On top of that, the card itself is wonderful. It's a 5 cost 6k with 1k counter. It's the same as the Sabo, just without the whole draw effect and the full board protection for 1 turn, but the on-block is still really amazing by itself. So definitely want this at 4. Next up for our amazing blocker list is Borsalino. This is another amazing card in the deck. I think Borsalino is good in anything that can have access to it, right? So it's a 4 cost on your opponent's turn 6k, but for your turn 5k, which is amazing. Because yep, he does have the opponent's turn, this gains 1k power and cannot be KO'd by effects. So again, a lot of your blockers are just really irritating to get rid of, other than bouncing them back. So again, this, as you can see, this is where the weakness of the deck comes in. It can struggle very heavily against stuff like Sakazuki, who wants to bounce your stuff rather than KO it. But sometimes you can even still force that deck into a situation where it needs to KO something, and stuff like this is just saying no. So yeah, being able to not be KO'd rather, in conjunction again with your leader, this allows your leader to not worry about Borsalino when he's on the board. At least from like KO effects, right? And can continue to protect your other things, or you can even Borsalino and do the whole like Hina and Sabo combo. If you block with this, you keep the blocker alive, and then yeah, you've still got like a decent board. You can still like behind any of your blockers, Hina especially, you can build like a board behind this wall. I love this lineup of cards. I think this is phenomenal for the deck, especially when the rest of the deck is all about being aggressive and removing. This kind of allows the leader to kind of switch up between aggressive and defensive plays, and really allows you to be like this really good like jack of all trades, but also sometimes feeling like master of all kind of things. So you're not giving up too much for one thing, and instead you can kind of do whatever you want, and it just kind of works. So yeah, again, another 1k counter card that's really good. Borsalino's just a fantastic card in the deck. So definitely want these at 4. You could do the same thing and decide which of the blockers you want at 3, because they're all great. But I don't mind having them all like this. It's completely fine to me. Okay, so now that we've gotten over the characters, we're now going to get over to the events of the deck and the counters of the deck. So we'll start off with 2 of Firefist. It's not a hit or miss per se. It's more so just, I think at 2 it's fine. I think there's times where I've wanted to bump it up to 3. I don't think I'd ever play this at 4, but I also wouldn't want to see this at 1, right? Okay, so it's the Revolutionary Army one. It can be searched by Bella Bay. And it's got the main effect of give up to one of your opponent's characters minus 4k power during this turn. Then if you have 2 or less life cards, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 0. With a power of 0 or less, right? Excuse me. So yeah, this card's another way to minus power in the deck. It's a really good option in terms of doing that, right? That you don't mind being at 2 or less life, because for this deck, especially because you're in red, that means you're also in radical beam range. So there's a lot of good reasons to be at 2 life mainly. So like you take the first 2 hits, and then that's kind of when you start defending. That's when you kind of start being like, right, what can I do? And then, of course, this brings Firefist online fully. This allows you to KO stuff at 0, with this card in particular. Because it's a low-cost card itself, this allows you to kind of combo with some of your other, like, low-cost, power-reducing cards, like Koala and Otama, or even the Karasu, if it's able to be on play or swing, right? And it allows you to remove some of those pesky blockers, some of those pesky, like, smaller-cost characters without much issue if you haven't got Sabo as well. Or this can be another good combo option with Sabo. This allows you to bring down even cards that are like say 8k, like the Katakuri, right? And allow you to kind of help with that tempo swing, help you with that kind of board removal and kind of swing things in your favor and kind of let you take control of the game. But yeah, I don't think I'd probably want it any less. I don't think I'd want it at 4 though, so I'm kind of jumping around with either 2 or 3 of them at the moment just to see which one I like more. But for now, I think 2 is fine. I think 2 allows me to kind of do what I want to do in the deck, right? Alright, and time for a card that I'm quite fond of. Emporio Energy Hormone. So for 3 cost, which is kind of steep for a counter, you can give your leader or one of your characters up to 3k power during the battle, which is fine. But then you're able to play a revolutionary army character with 5k power or less from your hand, which to me feels good. It's not amazing. It's not like, oh god, you gotta run this at 4, because for 3, like, that means you need to have 3 done up to commit to this card alone. And this card isn't even like defending you as well as say Rad Beam at 2 is, right? This is like guard point, but kind of like hit and miss, because guard point is just 1 and is defending you for the same power, but this lets you play Revo cards. This lets you cheat out your Karasus or even your Evenkovs, especially with both the counter effect and the trigger, because the trigger, if you do hit this, which I mean I have a few times and it's been really good when you do, you just get to play a Revo card. So again, I think this card's really good to play in the deck, because you can kind of, like, if you're going first, you have your first turn, you kind of skip it, whatever, maybe you search with Bello Bay, maybe you play Nami down, right? But then your turn 2, you've got 3 done up, you can kind of still swing with your leader for 5k, and then you can kind of, you can be all like, oh yeah, okay, I'll just pass my turn then, and then your opponent's given one of 2 options. They kind of have to swing into you at least once to try and check your life, because that's the name of the game. And then you can kind of just pay the 3 dom, play this, and there you go, boom, you've got Karasu or an Evenkov out for free to just kind of have an amazing turn 3. Or they kind of have to respect the fact that you have this in your hand potentially, and they can't do much else. You know, this kind of becomes like a dead turn for them otherwise, right? So basically just staying at 3 Don if this is in your hand, along with like an Evenkov or Karasu, or even like something else, right? It kind of like, it forces almost your opponent to kind of give in and have to like do something with this card, or at the very least commit more so that they have to kind of get over the power, but at least you're able to still play a Revo. So I think in a lot of situations, you kind of still win with this card. That being said, again, you don't really want to run it at 3 or 4 because it can kind of start clogging the hand, and whilst you do have 1 or 2 things that might be able to trash away this card to kind of fix your hand, or it might be some of the trash fodder you have, it's still not like, you know, you see it and you think, do I even try and defend with this late game, or do I just kind of give up with it, right? So we just have it too. It's a nice card to have. It definitely helps extend the plays. It definitely helps even start off some of your plays early game. And in that early game, your opponent definitely has to respect this card if you decide to keep the 3 down up. So yeah, very, very decent card, very nice card to have in the deck. I definitely would just keep it in for now. But it's definitely one of the first cards you can consider replacing if you're not too fond of it, right? So Alright then, next card to talk about, this is where you might see a theme. We kind of have a lot of our events at 2. This is no different, so we have Radical Beam. Radical Beam is a phenomenal card, just kind of counter for 2k, and then if you're at 2 or less life, you can counter for another 2k. For 1 cost, this is great. There's a reason this was restricted, but now that we have it back at 4, I probably would want to play this at 4. One of the first things you could consider removing, right, is the energy hormone counter. And it's, you know, you're not doing yourself a disservice. You'd definitely be right by doing that. This is a phenomenal counter to use. You probably want this at 4 in most things, right? But this is one of the few decks that's kind of okay with getting away with that. There was even 1 or 2 times where I didn't even have any of these in the deck, and the deck performed just fine, right? But you're better safe. You know, it's better safe than sorry, right? You definitely want these in the deck. You definitely want to see if you can try and find them. They're definitely great for defending. Completely fantastic card. No reason not to have them, right? So if you can definitely like figure out, you know, if you have a bit of a different play style, or like you would run this deck, but you'd probably remove 1 or 2 things in terms for this, that's completely fine. This is definitely one of the few things you'd want to go upon, and you feel completely fine doing that. But yeah, I think this deck completely performs well, even with just the 2. Okay, last but not least, we have 2 Jet Pistol. Of course, it is a removal deck, so you want one of the really good removal cards. Jet Pistol, KO one of your opponent's characters with a 6k power or less. Really good card. Its trigger is just activate this main. So for 4, this is pretty good. It's kind of amazing to me that you can kind of still do some stuff where if you want to remove a bunch of things from board, you can remove some 6ks with Jet Pistol and still play your Sabo. Or, you know, because you have so many like minus powers, with this being like a 4 cost, you can definitely do a bunch of minus power stuff and then just remove stuff with Jet Pistol. So yeah, Jet Pistol itself has a lot of value in this. I did consider running as well the King Kong guns from from the Free Captain Star deck as well. Either that or over this, because being able to KO 7k power or less is pretty good with this, because again, you have a lot of like power removing options. That those heavier KOs might be worthwhile. But Jet Pistols I think are fine, they're consistent, they get the job done, because again you have so much, these do the job just fine, just alright. It still can get over blockers by themselves even if you don't see the minus powers, right? Because the reason why I talk about getting rid of blockers so much is because we are in this kind of like, I think, blocker heavy kind of meta now, where like there's a lot of those just kind of coming out. You want to deal with them, you want to get rid of them, and this deck does that completely fine. It has quite a few options to get over that. So yeah, we definitely want to seize it too. This is another card I'd probably consider bumping up to like maybe 3, maybe 4. It depends on how you want the deck to go, but I think it's completely fine at 2 as well. And that is basically it for the Sabo deck profile. Essentially what this deck wants to do is it wants to be able to just remove everything on the opponent's board whilst also being able to build up your own board. And it's got plenty of ways to kind of do that. It's got plenty of options for removal, or at least in terms of like lowering the power, so then you can kind of even just swing into stuff to get rid of it. Your opponent can't really contest it all that well. The Karasus really help oppress against the opponent's leader especially. So once you do have a wide board and you have at least 1 or 2 Karasus on board, you can kind of just swing with those for 7k each, minus your opponent's power by like 1k, and then they kind of have to defend a 3k leader versus things like 7ks, your own 5, like even 5ks become tough to defend them against it. But then on top of that, you also have some really good defensive options for the deck as well. So if you need time to build that board, or if you're just not seeing the pieces that you want to see, you have these amazing walls in your blockers, being your Borsalino, your Hina, and your Sabo. And you're kind of able to hide behind them with the power of both the blocker effects, especially the Hina one, and your leader's ability to kind of stop your characters from being KO'd. I think this deck is a really good like reaction deck, so like your opponent kind of responds with something to you, or kind of does something to like kick things off, and then this deck can like respond just as good, or probably better in some cases. Again, with the Sabo, you can want to drop the Sabo to kind of like the 6 cost one to kind of remove something whilst also dropping your own 7k body on the board. And then it's just really good to kind of like go from there, and kind of like you've got the Chacker who can come in and kind of give things rested on, allowing like abilities to still kick off, whilst also just powering up your characters for even bigger swings. So So there's a lot of value in this deck. I think this deck has a lot of potential, absolutely. I think it's the sleeper hit of OP5, next to things like the Rosinante, right? But even then, I think people have still looked at the Rosinante more than they have the Sabo. I feel like this is definitely the one that like has so much potential as it is right now. There's still so many different ways I think you can build this leader, especially, and it only gets better in OP6, in my opinion. So when that stuff comes out, I think there's so many different ways you can build this leader. There's so many ways you can have fun with it too. And if you haven't gave this deck a try, if you have the options to, if you can build it, or if you've been on like half and halves about it, honestly build it. Honestly try it out. It's so fun, especially this build in particular. I've had such a blast with this leader, and I'm gonna keep like building it, gonna keep testing it, gonna keep trying new things with it and seeing what happens. It's definitely one of my more favorite leaders of the game so far. But yeah, that has definitely been everything so far. So just keep an eye out for any more deck profiles I do in the future, or maybe even some gameplay videos. Maybe I'll show off the 2 decks I've done so far, and can really like put to use how good they are and how like phenomenal they can be against current meta. So yeah, that is everything. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys later.